I'm headed to the small town of Darby, Connecticut to investigate an abandoned opera house that closed its doors in 1945. I'm meeting a group of volunteers who are trying to save it, and they tell me that this is no ordinary opera house, but that it has a mysterious secret in the basement. Darby is officially the smallest city in Connecticut. With a population of just over 4,000, I'm wondering why they would build such an extravagant opera house that most of the townsfolk could fit into.
What we do know is that about 50 years ago, almost exactly, the theatrical company actually did try to establish this as their home base. They had the state fire marshal come through. The state fire marshal gave a cost that was prohibitively expensive, and that pretty much was the final nail in the coffin for this thing. But after that, they just closed the door, and that was it.
Looking at the pictures is one thing, but when you come inside, you can feel the place. You can feel what it would be like to have been here when it was operating and full of people and entertainment on stage and the chatter, and you would think about how people were dressed then and what their lives were like and how they got here and what their home life was like. And to me, that kind of puts that into perspective.
This was both a public hall as well as an opera house. Now, in all honesty, it did vaudeville a lot longer than it did opera. Amelia Earhart came here. Imagine the old-time variety shows. A lot of the people who came here, yes, some of them were famous, but many of them sort of came and went.
Built in 1888, the Opera House was named for one of the biggest employers in town, the Sterling Piano Company. As local industries boomed, audiences flocked to Darby. It was so popular that D.W. Griffiths held the premiere of his groundbreaking film, Birth of a Nation here.
But after that, they kind of like locked it up and said goodbye.
This over here would be the aisle, okay, and these are the rows for the chairs, and it forms like a triangle.
This is how you check the attendance of the house for the evening or the afternoon, is you put your face and look through the hole there. Gave you a good view of the auditorium.
These are background scenes. You know, you have an enchanted forest, you have a seashore. I believe they're over 100 years old.
If you look at these seats, they have these wire racks underneath. You know, in the old days, a lot of the men wore hats and boulders, and they would stick their hats underneath the seats. There are several seats up here have a circle star cut out on them. Here. And a story I was told is that if you sat in a seat that had a star in it the night they were giving out a prize, you won a prize. I've only found two so far. This one here and that one there.
As we went under the stage, there were ghostly reminders of past performers long forgotten.
These were dressing rooms down over here.
Posters from various shows, I imagine. Trip to Chinatown.
Two Little Vagrants.
Looks like 1889 here.
Mr. Sampson the Strongman. So ghostly looking.
Well, what's interesting is even the graffiti here, 1939 to 42, Oklahoma Joe. That might have been a stage act. I mean, just over the years, people just would write their stuff, write their names. And
Bob Hope is, I guess, right. He's right over here. Bob Hope. He signed his name in a lowercase.
1942.
Bing Crosby's over here a couple times.
They just came and went.
They used to have matinees. A matinee was like the businessman special, where you would see a vaudeville act of dancing girls on stage. So this was the casting couch room for the dancing girls. We kissed the walls.
Oh yeah, look at that.
It had to be done in the maybe 20s and 30s.
The changing rooms under the stage were definitely eerie and poignant, but the Opera House had another surprise in store as we explored further down into the basement.
Watch your feet. This was the mayor's office, which is really not that big.
Is it unusual to have like a mayor's office underneath an opera house? It seems unusual.
A bit in this case. This was designed as a city hall, from the street level on down, and the second floor on up was supposed to be the
Oh,
opera
I see.
house.
So when it was built, it was done like that.
This was how it was designed, yes.
And if you look behind here, this is the back side of the jails.
You do this part, I should say.
The cool sound when you slam it shut.
I have some really interesting stories about some criminals, hardcore criminals, who are tied to the Black Hand and other things, who would be held in here overnight. Derby had one of the very few, one of the only actually, Italian-speaking police officers. He would often disguise himself as a drunk and sort of go in here, and they would chatter in Italian, you know, oh, I can't believe they fell for it, or whatever, you know, and he would listen and interact with them, and then the following morning he'd reveal himself to be a police officer.
Have you ever heard the term being collared by the police? These are the metal collars that went around the prisoners' necks when they were getting transported and padlocked. The old term getting collared. Yeah, those coppers collared me.
This room over here, you know, I thought was interesting because I was told that they used to bring the prisoners in here and put the hot light on them. But if you notice, it's a black room. There's a drainage over here. There's a wire with a clip on it, so I'm thinking this is more of a dark room.
I was always into history of the town, the dark side, let's say. Derby has the first, Lydia Sherman was the first female serial killer. You know, so people.
And what's her story?
She poisoned everybody. She poisoned her husband, poisoned her family.
Arsenic.
Yeah. Nikolai was he used to work in in the mines or something like that, in the area, silver mines. And Nikolai shot his girlfriend in the street early 1900, committed suicide in the jail cells, and he consumed rat poisoning. We've had full body apparitions appear in here, and it'll knock you cold. If you had a scale of 1 to 10 being with activity, this will be about 8 or so. You know, during the day we've had plenty of people coming in. I can actually show you one on my phone.
Okay, see.
There's an aisle here with steps, and as soon as you'll see, we tried a flashlight. You know, just see somebody try to replicate it with a flashlight. You'll see somebody run across the screen. There you go.
Oh yeah, look at that.
The more I explored the Opera House, the more it became apparent that this had been the focal point of the whole city of Derby. But like so many other boom towns, once the local industries died out, so did the audiences. Once some of the greatest names of the 20th century came here, Harry Houdini and Amelia Earhart. But all that's left are the ghosts of performances past and the townspeople who watched them.
The more I looked into it and the more I researched it, I said, oh my gosh, there's really something wonderful here. We need to try to resurrect it, but we need to find a new way of doing it. Ideally, it needs to be a theater. We need to bring back theater here. But we also realize that you have to be thoughtful of the fact that it needs to be able to sustain itself.
I would love to see it restored. We have about as good a chance as any as we have since they basically turned their backs on it just over 50 years ago.